I love this story. Transport for London bosses have banned an advert for a new play in the West End because it features a Victoria sponge cake. And the ad apparently promotes the consumption of high-fat, salt and sugar foods and didn't comply with the organisation's advertising policy. So they've now had to rip it down. This is for a Broadway show, Tony and Tina's Wedding, which has this cake in it. I don't know where we start with this. Kevin, when did we say you couldn't have a big cake as a promo?
I know. Look, there's an obesity problem in London, as there is in the UK and much of the world, certainly the developed world. So the ban is on advertising that pushes unhealthy foods. I think this is caught.
But there's a wedding cake in the production.
Look, I think it's daft. I think they need to tweak the ban so you can't say buy cakes.
Oh please!
You don't want.
I did my monologue today on these trigger warnings, right? How it's been established that trigger warnings actually trigger people who the warnings are supposed to protect, because it reminds them of what they're supposed to be not thinking about. Right. I mean, Esther, we are literally going nuts here with this stuff.
I do think... I'm very curious whether actually there's a link between, banning ads of unhealthy foods and whether people stop consuming them. Right? Because I don't know...
Do you think anybody looks at a production for a Broadway show which has a poster of two characters on a sponge cake and they think, I must go and eat a sponge cake?
But makers of very sugary and fatty, unhealthy foods would not spend a fortune on advertising if they didn't think it was getting us to eat it.
This is a show. I mean, if anything, it will make me want to see the show.
I agree.
Opposed to actually buying a cake.
Let me bring in Katty, who's a welcome visitor to Piers Morgan Uncensored. So you've done this book, The Power... what code? What is that?
The Power Code.
The Power Code.
It was, long
it runs
time
around, okay.
Collins.
More joy, less ego, maximum impact for women. Is the problem with all these things, are too many women not in charge, or are too many women in charge of these mad decisions?
No, I mean, we've stalled at the top of women. We've got only 10% of CEOs are women. 30 out of the world's 300 countries have women leaders. Women improve the bottom lines of the companies they work for. And so we were trying to look at why are women not progressing? Why have they not got to the top? And one of the things we found is that actually there was a study out of Harvard showing that women don't really want power. They look at power and they think the cost of getting it too high. Power itself seems unappealing.
I've met some power-crazed women.
Yep, of course. There are going to be women in power who love to wield power the old way. What we were looking at is why aren't they progressing and what could you do about power itself to change it, to get more women? I mean, if the world was in a wonderful state, we wouldn't have thought you need to change things. But
are you of the belief that if the world was run by women world leaders, we would have less turmoil and war?
We haven't got any evidence on that because there haven't been enough women leaders. So all of this is, we look at data and research. I'm not going to tell you that if women were running every single country, we wouldn't have wars. But we do know that women, when they run companies, for example, there's more women in senior positions at companies improve the bottom line of those companies. They make more profits, which most companies would think is a good thing. So we want more women at the top.
You spent 20 years in the States, reporting a lot for the BBC, obviously. Every week now, it seems to be a story of a kind of woke corporate campaign, spectacularly backfiring. It started with Gillette after the Me Too campaign, when they suddenly went all every man's a Harvey Weinstein till they prove otherwise. 9 billion came off the bottom line. They had to reverse and go back to alpha male advertising. We saw the Budweiser thing with Dylan Mulvaney, the transgender influencer.
Modelo now the biggest selling beer in America because of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've seen it with Target, who did a lot of stuff during Pride Month and got attacked by its consumer base. And now we've seen Ben & Jerry's, the ice cream champions in America, always doing politically motivated stuff. But they chose July the 4th to launch this campaign to basically guilt-trip America about Indigenous rights, which is a perfectly legitimate thing. But on July 4th, they actually targeted Mount Rushmore, obviously the four faces, they said, making them out to be a bunch of brazen thieves, when in fact they're four of the great presidents of the United States. I suspect this will backfire. I suspect there'll be a run of campaign against Ben & Jerry's. Where is all this going to go?
I don't know if the Ben & Jerry's case will backfire because Ben & Jerry's have long been known and associated with liberal causes. So I think that people expect it of Ben & Jerry's to some extent. I think CEOs in America, I'm sure you've spoken to them, Piers, are increasingly being put in a position, perhaps because of failure of politicians to get things done, where they're having to take positions on social issues that they don't want to, whether it's immigration, gun control. You've seen companies take positions on that too. I think it's incredibly awkward for CEOs. I don't think they can because they're client based, but also mostly because they're employee based. Because younger
That's what
employees
I
in
thought,
particular are pushing CEOs to take these.
But this reminds me, Esther, of the conversation I just had with Catherine Berbelsing, which is parents and students now driving the power. We're seeing this now with young employees, I quite agree with you, of these companies, driving them to take very woke positions. Disney had just had this huge bust up with Ron DeSantis in Florida. I don't think they should be doing any of this stuff.
Well, it's a case of the inmates are running the asylum. Because actually back in the day, you know, as arrogant as I think my generation is, the previous generations, you knew that you have to keep your mouth shut when someone with 20 plus years of experience is speaking, at the very least. But now we have these young people that think they know best. They have access to the internet. They know more than everyone else. And I think that's the bigger problem. I don't think it has to do with the consumer base, actually, for these companies, because you tend to divide them.
I like it when young people, you know, the new generations challenge the older generations. I actually think that's good. Yes, you've got to get the decisions right. Now, Ben and Jerry, I think their marketing's fantastic. They're getting talked about again. The people who will go and spend their dollars or pounds, wherever you are, euros, on Ben and Jerry's probably like all this.
It works now, but what if they go down the Budweiser route and
why would you stir up division on July the 4th, the day of unity? I mean, look, as a Brit, I don't, obviously celebrate July the 4th. I think we dropped the ball under old Mad King George, but that's another matter. But the idea of an American company that's been very successful in America launching this attack on the very idea of July the 4th, on July the 4th.
But it's an invented myth idea of July the 4th. It's not the true story of America,
They just celebrate independence from the Brits.
Yeah, but you know
really what it boils down to.
How it was achieved and what went on. It's like the old Mayflower story, isn't it? Which is all a bit.
All right, Katty, before I let you go, who's going to win the election 2024 in America?
I think Joe Biden probably wins, but if something happens to him or to the economy a month before the election, I think Donald Trump's the nominee.
Well, what a choice.
Yeah.
Country of 330 million people.
How can it be this?
And we're going to have a rerun.
Yes.
And I was exhausted at the end of the last time.
I'm exhausted just thinking about it. The Power Code. Terrific book, Katty Kay and Claire Shipman. I'm going to really enjoy showing this to people to see what they think. Have a good to see you. Thank you very much.